Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Wisdom and Wealth. I am here with an awesome guest. Super excited to share with Kevin Freeman, who's somebody, actually a friend of mine. Him and his wife Marnie, who are amazing people, and I love them. We had met at Trinity Prep originally in Keller, Texas. Came to do some devotional. And I still remember the first time Marnie, she like prayed over me and gave a hedge of protection for me and my family as I do speaking engagements but you guys have always struck me. But a quick intro on Kevin, man, globally recognized economist, financial expert, author of Pirate Money, where he talks about deep history of currency and depreciation of the U.S. dollar. He's an advisor to government agencies, Fortune 500 companies, policymakers on economic warfare, market vulnerabilities, impact of fiat currency. You guys are in for a treat today, and I'm super excited. Kevin, thank you so much for coming.
Oh, thank you, Cory. And I'll tell you, nothing compares to a Marnie prayer. I mean, the Marnie praying is it's changed my life. It's a marvelous thing.
It's awesome. And former teammate, 5th grade teammate. Right?
Yeah, right.
You guys, you go everywhere together. And this is one thing I notice, and our listeners know this about me. It's like, man, if you're awesome in your marriage, I love that. And I see you guys go everywhere together. You're in lockstep together every time I see you. And she was amazing for doing that. But you have always been somebody who is almost like this kind of Jordan Peterson-esque type intellect, and like that guy could listen to all day. And I got to listen to you at the chamber present on Pirate Money and give basically a presentation like you would federal agency. And I was like, this is incredible, and left a ton of people just thinking. And so anyways, I just really appreciate you, and I'm excited to jump into it.
All right. Well, great.
Well, if you don't mind, like you brought a bunch of pieces right now, some dollar bills, some coins. Talk about this for a minute. What did you bring?
Well, I've got gold, I've got silver, I've got banknotes, here's one that's really fun. This is a $20 bill. This is from the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, and it's from the late 1920s, and it says, "We'll pay to the bearer on demand $20. It wasn't $20. It would pay to the bearer. In fact, it says redeemable in lawful money of the United States at the United States Treasury, which this is lawful money. This was a $20 coin produced by the U.S. Treasury. These were identical in 1925. One of them was worth the same as the other. Can you imagine if your great-grandfather decided he was going to leave an inheritance to his children's children's children, right? Bible says a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. And he set aside 20 of these. That would have been enough to buy a car. 20 times 20 is $400. Would buy a very nice car. Not the best, certainly not a Model T, not the lowest, but it was a good car. This was worth the same. Now, here we are 100 years later. What can $400 buy you today?
A night at the Marriott in San Diego or LA that I just paid.
Yeah, or maybe a couple of tires for the car.
Yeah.
These $20 gold coins, that's worth almost $60,000.
Holy cow.
What would that buy you? It'd buy you a decent car. Not the top of the line, certainly not the entry level, Hyundai or whatever, but it would buy a good car. You can go to any car dealership and you say, I got $60,000, I want to buy a good new car. You could buy a pretty good car for that.
That's crazy. So I'm going to just put $60,020 in my pocket real quick.
Yeah. Well, that gold coin's only worth $3,000, but 20 of them would be worth $60,000.
What? Go ahead.
So the point of that is that over time, paper does not hold its value compared to precious metal. And that's a biblical concept. God said he would test our work by fire and see if it comes through fire as purified like gold and silver, or does it get burned up by like wood, hay, or stubble. So the history of humanity is that we've had money, and you can have the paper kind or you can have the precious metal kind. Over time, the precious metal kind is better. In America, unfortunately, we stopped the whole precious metal thing. And it happened in my lifetime. I was 10 years old when Richard Nixon took us off the gold standard. And a $20 bill has lost 90% of its purchasing power. $20 would buy me my perfect Saturday as a 10-year-old kid. I could do everything in the world I wanted. I could eat a cheeseburger, fries, and a shake. I could go to a movie. I could get a Spider-Man comic. I could get everything. And you know what I could get it for? I get it for $1.60.
Yeah.
That's everything I wanted in the world as a 10-year-old for $1.60. Today, it costs over $20 for that. It's just crazy what inflation has done to us. So I guess the main message I would say is that real money protects against inflation. Paper money does not, and we're unfortunately in a paper money system.
Well, talk about that a little bit. I get into conversations like this all the time, right? So, hey, how much cash should I have? How much is too much? How much is what? And we watch Warren Buffett, and he's in the biggest cash position he's ever had. And so all these things coming into, people even talking about living off the grid and just having a little bit of paper money or stashing some gold bars in the safe. I mean, where is a proper place for us to sit? And now I know everyone is situational, but we talk about paper money devaluing so quickly, especially with this inflationary environment or just over time. How are we going to solve that, or how can we solve it? Especially if we're talking about gold or precious metals keeping their value at least, or appreciating with time. Now I know you talked about there's talk about a credit card system and potentially returning back to that and having states adopt a system to do that.
Yeah, that's the subject of the book Pirate Money, which I talked about at the Metro Chamber. Bottom line is, the original notion for money was that this, which was a continental note, would be exchangeable for this, gold or silver. That was the original concept. You read that on the note there. And that system still works. The failure was we stopped backing our paper money with precious metal. Now, I think we should just return to that notion, only add some modern technology to where if you wanted to, for example, buy some gold, have it held on a depository in Texas where we have an official state Texas bullion depository. It's in Leander, just outside Austin. You can drive there. You cannot get in because it's more secure than Fort Knox. But you could put your gold there. And if you had your gold there and you wanted to spend it, you could take a MasterCard and you could go and spend that gold wherever you wanted to, or you could write a check on it, or you could show up and say, hey, I would like to withdraw this, and they would send you your gold. It would operate just like the old system was intended to, except your money would be held in the form of gold and silver, and it would hold its value over time. Your spending power would remain the same. 100 years ago, you could buy a great suit for 1 ounce of gold. Today, an ounce of gold is $3,000. Can you buy a decent suit for $3,000?
Yeah, I can do that.
The entire history of the gasoline price in America, because I went to the gas pump today and prices are coming down a little bit. Oil prices are coming down. The entire history of gas prices in America have been between 10 and 25 cents. Oh, Kevin, there's no way it's 10 to 25 cents. It's $2.77 at the Quick Trip around the corner. No, 10 and 25 cents if you take the silver content of a pre-1964 dime or a pre-1964 quarter. There's no point in American history that you couldn't buy a gallon of gasoline for the silver content of a dime or a quarter, somewhere in that range between 10 and 25 cents. So prices are absolutely... as Milton Friedman said, inflation is always a monetary phenomenon. It's not that prices are going up, it's that the value of the purchasing power of paper money is going down. So all I'm talking about is making gold and silver useful and exchangeable, and our Constitution allows it, and the state of Texas can do it, or the state of Florida, or Oklahoma, or Kansas, or Utah. And by the way, 24 states, after I wrote this book, 24 states are looking into doing what I just said, allowing their citizens to hold their money in the form of gold and silver, keep it at a depository so they don't have to lug around a gold coin and try and pay for stuff with it, and use an electronic transfer system or a paper transfer system like writing a check, and make it a full optional gold and silver economy. It would change the world.
Why did we even get off gold and silver? What was the point of not having a backed currency?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. One of them is greed. Sometimes it's just foolishness. Like this, the Continental Note, they said that this is a $4 spent. This is 1776 Philadelphia. Continental Congress produced this note. in 1776, and they said this bill entitles the bearer to receive 4 Spanish milled dollars or the value thereof in gold or silver, which is a great concept. The problem is they didn't have any gold or silver to back it up. This is a Spanish milled dollar, also known as a piece of 8. And this is a gold doubloon right there. That's a gold doubloon. So you've got gold and silver. When you hear gold doubloon and silver pieces of 8, don't you think Captain Jack Sparrow?
Yeah. Giving him gold to bloom.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we call it pirate money. Because originally, if you asked George Washington what a dollar was, he would not say it's a piece of paper with my picture on it. George Washington would say it's a Spanish mill dollar, and that's one. This is from 1783. So that's one Washington actually could have owned. And they would cut it up into 8 pieces. They would be pie-shaped pieces. You cut it up into 8 pies. Each one was called a bit. So you'll occasionally hear a shave and a haircut, 2 bits. You'll hear, 2 bits, 4 bits, 6 bits a dollar. A bit was a half a quarter. So that's the history of money. Why did we get off of it, though? Well, first off, they may never have gotten on it because they didn't have the money to back it. They just pretended.
Okay.
They committed a fraud, in essence. Secondly, they realized, for example, when you see the $20 gold coin and the $20 bill, FDR found out that people were going to hoard the $20 gold and they were going to spend the $20 bill. And so he ordered all of the gold confiscated in 1933. That was the first step to getting off a gold standard. He just said, if you have any of this, you're a criminal after a certain date in 1933. If you have any gold here, gold here, gold here, gold there, you're a criminal subject to arrest. You can be thrown in prison. So everybody had to turn their gold in and they got pieces of paper.
Yeah.
So that's a fraud that they perpetrated, because the next year he said, by the way, that 1 ounce of gold that we told you was worth $20.87 or something like that, it's now worth $35. So they literally took it from everybody. And then the last reason is that if nobody ever checks to see if the gold is there, like they're talking about checking in Fort Knox, well, why do you have to have gold there? You just pretend like it's there. So it's a fraud. And eventually the Congress wants to spend more money than we actually have money. So they start printing paper money, and then they start borrowing money by selling treasury bonds.
So that was in the video that you shared when they were talking about the shutdown and just injecting. It wasn't even injecting cash. It was just literally a button punch of numbers that you entered into the computer, releasing dollars into the
if you want to
economy.
see printed bills, you can go over to the United States Treasury at Fort Worth and you can watch where they print the money.
Yeah.
And they actually print money. But that's a small fraction of our money supply. All they do is mark it up on a computer. That was said by the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, on 60 Minutes. We just create it. How do you create it? Well, out of thin air. We just mark up the computer and say, you've got that much in your account. Wouldn't that be nice?
Right.
Corey, you go home one day and you log on to your Wells Fargo account or whatever you use as a bank, and all of a sudden there's 10 million more dollars put in there. Well, that's how they create money right there. They mark it up, they create it out of thin air, and then what they do is they buy United States Treasury bonds with that money and hold the Treasury bonds as collateral, and that money then is spent by the government. And they still spend more than they take in.
Yeah, which is insane. How do we get this even under control? We try to get back on that. Is that something that Trump and the new administration is even entertaining? I mean, they're talking about setting up a new Bitcoin agency and getting that going. I mean, is there a competing factor when it comes to currency there too? Or how do we even make sense of this stuff as we try to move forward?
Money is, I have 5 undeniable truths. Truth number 1 through 5. The 5th one is money is changing whether we like it or not. Money will be different, but it's been different our whole lifetimes. I mean, as a kid, there were no debit cards. Nobody was going to the ATM machine and taking cash out. Now they have reverse ATM machines. You go put cash in and they'll give you a debit card out that you go spend, because we're moving towards a cashless society. So it's going to change. The question is, what's going to win? Is it going to be a cryptocurrency in Bitcoin? Is it going to be a central bank digital currency? Is it going to be BRICS nation currency, or a euro, or the dollar as we know it now? Something is going to change in the next several years, and we're at that inflection point. It's the same thing. We used to watch television with these big tube TVs, and there were 3 channels, and then cable came along, and then satellite, and then now nobody uses any of those. They just stream what they want to when they want to. Money's changing exactly. We didn't have PayPal, Venmo, Cash Apps. All of those things are a part of that massive change on money. I wrote a book, Pirate Money, to say what we ought to do.
Okay.
And we can do at the state level under Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution.
So go back, and that's purely what it was. You said earlier, go back to gold and silver and have it backed by something, or whatever that is. Even if it's crypto, to have crypto backed by gold and silver, or is that?
No. But historically, from the dawn of man till now, biblically, money has always been gold and silver, sometimes copper. It has been this. Money is 3 things. It's a unit of account, a means of exchange, and a store of value. Now, the paper dollar in front of you is a great unit of account. We can price anything we want to in dollars. You tell me what something costs, and you're going to say, well, it costs $4 or $72 or whatever. It's a good unit of account. We know what the unit of account is. It's a good means of exchange. You and I can come to an agreement. If you had chickens in your backyard and you wanted to give me chickens and I wanted to give you wheat, we don't have to exchange chickens for wheat. I can pay you in dollars, you can pay me in dollars, and it's a perfect means of exchange.
Yeah.
It's been a terrible store of value historically. Gold is a good unit of account. I can price anything in ounces of gold. Anything you want, I can price it in ounces of gold. It's a decent unit of account. It's a decent means of exchange, but it's really hard. If I wanted to buy that cup of coffee from you and all I've got's a gold coin, you can't really shave off a little bit of that. So it's decent for big purchases. It's terrible for small purchases. I buy a car with 20 gold coins, but I really can't buy a cup of coffee. I can't buy a paperclip. I can't, I can't do normal things with it. So, but it's a great store of value.
Right.
What we're talking about is taking a system that takes the best of both and it becomes a good unit of account, means of exchange, and store of value. And you can do that with gold held and a debit card for transactions. And by the way, this is something that has been a part of the American experience as far back as you want to go. I showed you the original Continental note that mentions gold and silver. I can take you to 125 years ago. A guy wrote a book called The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. And The Wonderful Wizard of Oz is talking about a gold and silver standard. People don't realize that because they've just seen the movie. Nobody's ever read the book.
Yeah.
But the whole thing is an economic allegory because we'd gotten off the gold standard and he was returning us to the gold standard and also wanted to add silver to it. So it'd be a gold and silver standard. In other words, Dorothy was no longer in Kansas anymore. She's in this strange new world. How do I get back to real America? And so he wrote The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, which is the short for ounce. And how do you get back? Well, Dorothy had to travel the yellow brick road, and she was supposed to wear, in the movie, it was ruby slippers because it was Technicolor, one of the first Technicolor films, so they wanted the color to pop, but it was really supposed to be silver slippers. And she was traveling with her companions, with factory worker, the farmer, even her little dog Toto was the teetotalers, and the Cowardly Lion were the politicians. And the Wicked Witch, the bankers of the Northeast, didn't want her to find the answer, so she sent the flying monkeys, the lawyers, out to catch her. And she stopped by, maybe the answer is in the Emerald City. And Emerald City was an allegory for paper money. The greenback is what it was called then. And she says, well, is there any power behind the curtain? Is it backed up by anything? And she found no, there was no power behind the curtain. So how do I get home? You take your gold, the yellow brick road, your gold, with your silver slippers, click your heels together, and you have the answer. You've had it all along. Gold and silver is the solution. That's what L. Frank Baum wrote in his book. This has been a part of the American experience, and only recently have we forgotten the importance of this.
See, this is what was fascinating to me, because even the stories, I love this. So as we get into this, I mean, it seems to me, or probably a lot of people, that like, hey, government is too deep in this, or we are too far along in this to go return back to a gold and silver backed currency, or at least to make it utilize it again, right?
100% agree. We have $36.5 trillion in debt to back To back that with gold and silver would be insane.
Yeah.
You couldn't do it. But that's not how economies work. That's not how transformations and transitions work. You don't immediately switch from buggy whips and a horse and buggy to automobiles. There's transition period. And the transition period is laid out in the book Pirate Money. It is using what the founders gave us in Article 1, Section 10. They said the federal government will have their money, and they do. The state can only make gold and silver coins legal tender. The only thing a state can do. Well, all we suggest is they do it on an optional basis, and people will opt into it over time and slowly move out of dollars. Will the dollar go away in our lifetime? I don't think so. Yeah. And in fact, we're not gunning for that. I don't want to eliminate the Federal Reserve. We had Randy Quarles. I was on a Utah study committee where I served with a former vice chairman of the Federal Reserve, a former chief financial officer for Citigroup and American Express, the head of the World Gold Council. And we said, does this plan that I wrote about in this book, which started the whole process, does that hold up? Will it work? And the vice chairman of the Federal Reserve says, absolutely. People should have a choice. Will it end the dollar? No, absolutely not. We'll still be using dollars. In fact, it'll strengthen the dollar because people will put money in gold, and the gold will come to America. It won't go to China or Russia or any of the other threatening nations around the world. We'll acquire the most gold, which will put us in a strong position. And it's optional. You have a choice.
Yeah.
You open your wallet. How many credit cards do you carry?
Too many.
Too many. Well, you have a choice. I think I'll put this on my MasterCard. I think I'll put it on my Visa. I think I'll pay for it with the debt. We just have choices, right?
Yeah.
Why not have a choice? I think I'll pay for it in gold or silver and have a card in your wallet that does that. It's an easy, simple addition, just another way to pay that has the potential to change the monetary system of planet Earth over time.
See, I like that. I like the option potential because because there's still a lot of obviously emotional ties to paper dollars.
Sure.
Right? People love it in the bank. They got guys.
And I have paper dollars.
Yeah.
I carry it in my wallet. I have gold on a card, and I have paper dollars I carry in my wallet. Keep some of my safe at home.
Yeah.
If the power goes out, I'm going to have some paper currency I can do exchanges with.
So you're talking about having this at the essentially the bank in Leander. If we do this in Texas, like the bank at Leander, like that's where I have my stash, like I would the bank at Chase or Wells Fargo. And I got $100,000 in this bank account, and I can run my debit card anytime I want to, just the same I can do with gold and silver.
Right.
But it's appreciating during that time.
Well, it's maintaining its value. The dollar is depreciating.
Yeah.
And it will. The Federal Reserve says we're going to allow 2% inflation. If it gets above 2%, we're going to try and bring it down to 2%. If it gets below 2%, they promise to bring it up to 2%. They want to keep 2% inflation. Well, 2% a year losing purchasing power, adds up pretty fast.
Yeah.
The one correction I'd make, it is not a replacement for banking. For example, if you have gold and silver in Leander and you're able to spend it here, you're not going to get your house loan there. You're not getting a car loan there. You're not getting a certificate of deposit there.
Oh, I got you.
You're going to get those from a traditional bank. It's more akin to a partner alongside the Federal Reserve than it is your actual Frost Bank, Wells Fargo, Citigroup, whatever bank you happen to use. It's more competition to the Federal Reserve, which I think the Federal Reserve needs some competition. There's plenty of competition in the banks. You can move out of one bank to another bank to another bank, but there's no competition for the Fed. I think it will be healthy for the Fed to have some competition.
100%. They don't have any.
They don't.
There's none. I mean, I was just reading a story this morning on Doge cutting down on the consultant groups to the federal government. One had there's as the federal government, their sole client, they were $11 billion in revenue from the government loan. And now there's going to be a lot of shakeup, right? But at the same time, you're talking about basically a king that has no check system, it feels like sometimes.
Right. And if you have no competition, you get lazy.
Yeah.
I remember when I was growing up, when we would travel across the country, we would stop at the Howard Johnsons. And it was so cool because they had ice cream and they had kids' meals and restrooms and all that. And there was no competition. That was it. You could get Stuckey's and you could get your peanut brittle, or you could go to Howard Johnson's. And then McDonald's came along. and there was some competition. And McDonald's was infinitely better because they would feed you with speedy service. Howard Johnson, you sit there forever to wait for a waitress to come over to your table. It was terrible. You're on the road. You're trying to get somewhere. And then all of a sudden competition started to create. And now think of all the gas stations, all of the restaurants and everything. When you travel from Dallas to Houston, all along the way, you can stop at a bakery that's phenomenal. You can stop at a gas station that's phenomenal. You've got so many different places. Howard Johnson's got sloppy and lazy. Now, look where Howard Johnson is today. No competition made them terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it does. It creates lackluster results. I mean, you don't even realize how bad you got it sometimes until somebody better comes along.
Yeah, well, can you imagine if the Cowboys, going back to your playing career, if the Cowboys played, in at the college level all year long, and then they got thrust into the Super Bowl without any decent competition, what happens? They get murdered.
Smashed.
They do, because competition makes you better.
Yeah.
And if you're in a weak league, and you all of a sudden, you see that in college game, you see it in the pro game. If you play nobodies and then you play somebodies, you're toast. Even if you're very talented, even if you're very good, even if you practice a lot, without competition, things go bad.
Challenge to get better, man. I've seen that. You probably have these, where you look back at times in your life and you're like, man, I was an idiot. And it's not just for making idiot decisions, but like even idiot in your development. And I crack up because that common story. I don't know if you ever remember Erin Botsford. She's a big mentor of mine. And she had asked me early on in my business, and she goes, well, tell me what it looks like. And I try to give her, what does the process look like for me to come on board as a client? And I miserably gave this horrible attempt to share what I did. And she looked at me like I was stupid 10 times more than anybody else. And she was like, well, you said you were doing good. And I was like, yeah. And she goes, what do you compare, or what do you credit that to? And I go, well, people trust me. She goes, oh, that'll end. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But she gave me this the end result was she had basically given me, 30, 40 years of bad decisions, of knowledge and wisdom to me. And now I look back on those days where I'm like, what an idiot I was. And some of the things that I was doing. And even now, so you see that people coming in, not realizing different levels of service or product that they're getting. But that's 100% why we need that at the federal level. Right?
So if you stop and think, the Federal Reserve has no competition in the United States. The only competitors to the Federal Reserve in the U.S. dollar are foreign competitors. And if they're successful, America loses. What we're talking about is creating competition at the state level for our currency, where you could put it in gold, silver, or dollars. And if the dollar were to lose, the American people could win. It is the only kind, it's the best kind of competition, because America wins either way. If you have only the BRICS nations creating an alternative to the dollar and they win, we lose. Yeah. It will be terrible. So we can make the Fed better, and we can make our money safer by having the states just follow what Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution says we can do, and that's give people a choice. And the more choice they have, the more competition there will be, the better off America will be. So
give me, what can I do? What can listeners do if they, I'm like, because super compelling. I like it. Something I hear my dad talk about all the time, right? It's the baby boomer generation talks about this all the time, is they want more gold. They want a stash because there's a trust level there. What can we do if we want to support that and go, how do we get behind it?
First thing to do is get educated, get a copy of the Pirate Money book. You can get it on Amazon. I've got a website, piratemoneybook.com. If somebody calls you and says, Cory, you're just selling book, you give me their name and say, here's their address. And I've probably given away thousands of books because I want to get the message out. Yeah. That's the point. But you can get it on Amazon. You can read the book, get educated. That's what happened. I mean, we tried to pass this in Texas 2 years ago, got very close, and it didn't pass. So I sat down at Liberty Rock Ranch and wrote this book out in 2 weeks. No editing, straight up, 2 weeks. It was in print a month after I started it, wow, which is kind of amazing. It has been now read in every state of the United States, and I've had treasurers, governors, different people who've got copies of it and said, we want to do this. Once that book got out, people so get educated. That's the first step. Second step is learn what's happening in your state. If this goes beyond Texas, go to transactionalgold.com. That's a website, and read there what's happening in Missouri or Arkansas or Florida, and get behind it. Call your legislator. Say, hey, here's a copy of the book. I had a call one day from a guy, he's now in Congress. He's Congressman Riley Moore out of West Virginia. I look at my phone, I pick it up, and there's a call from West Virginia. Who's calling me? Who do I know there? So I just answer it. I don't normally answer it, but I just felt compelled. I have to answer it. He said, hi, I'm the treasurer of the state of West Virginia named Riley Moore, and I want to know who you are. I said, well, Treasurer Moore, why do you need to know who I am? He said, I have 10 copies of your book on my desk. I've never gotten a book sent to me like this. Well, have you read it? No, I haven't read it. I called you to figure out what it's about. And so I told him, and he said, I love it. And he is now, by the way, in Congress. Jimmy Patronis, treasurer of the state of Florida, read this book, decides that Florida ought to do this, funded a study to see if it's feasible. Now, I'll tell you, Jimmy Patronis, you've heard of Matt Gaetz. He in Congress, he resigned so he would be attorney general, and then he withdrew from attorney. Well, the hand-picked replacement by Donald Trump for Matt Gaetz's seat is Jimmy Patronis. He is the Republican nominee for Congress. It's a safe seat. He's going to be in Congress. So I thought he'd drop this like a hot potato. He has not. He said, this is good for Florida. We want to do it. And he's purposed to do it. So if you live in one of those states, Governor Greg Abbott was asked a couple of weeks ago, hey, I've heard about this pirate money thing, this gold thing that Freeman's talking about. Will you sign this bill if it passes? And he tells this large room of his largest donors, yes, I will sign it. So we just need to keep the pressure on. Don't let people steal this opportunity from us. In all these states, we're working in Utah and all these different states. You can learn about that at transactionalgold.com, and then help us. Get copies of the book and start giving them to the treasurers and to the state senators and the state legislators, because when they read it and see it, they get on board. Or if they hear me speak, I give these 5 undeniable truths. And when they hear that, it's like, I want that. You heard it. Oh, the Metro Chamber, we probably sold 50 or 100 books at the chamber.
Wow.
And they say, I want this. We need this.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm behind it. I love it. This is awesome. Well, and you also have Economic War Room. You have your podcast that I want to give a shout out to. Before we take off. I mean, fascinating. And I could go all day listening to you talk, Kevin, which is, I really appreciate it. But you have your podcast, economicwarroom.com.
Right.
And go follow that.
That's a Blaze television show, but it's also available as a podcast. It's a video podcast like this.
Okay.
And we're also on American Family Radio on Saturday mornings with Pirate Money Radio. And this is one of 10 projects. I'm so sick of watching people on Fox or Blaze or wherever. They're simply talking heads telling us what the problem is. I don't want problems. I want solutions. So every show we do on Economic War Room, we accompany it with an economic battle plan that people can get free that says, how do I protect my family? How do I make a difference? What do I need to do? We call it an economic battle plan. So if they go to economicwarroom.com, they can sign up to receive a 1 email a week from Economic War Room that will tell them this is your battle plan and here's a link to the show so you can watch it for free. Otherwise, you have to subscribe to Blaze, which costs $100 a year or something like that. You can get it free at economicwarroom.com and sign up and get a free economic battle plan.
Awesome. Man, I love this. This is, I know you guys are liking this just as much as I do, because I could listen for a long time. We can go for a long time, but I'm super thankful for you coming in. You're absolutely fascinating. You and Marnie are awesome. And Kevin, you're blessing us a whole lot today. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Cory.